What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Fitness for Life podcast. I'm your host, Jackson Lohr, and today I have with me special guest Tom Sheppard. Tom is coming to us from Ohio, a recent transplant there. And Tom is the head coach for Elite FTS and TIB Army, is a co-author and aspiring author. His books are piling up in the process. So really excited to have Tom here to talk with us. Tom, thanks for joining.
Dude, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me on. And yeah, it's an exciting time right now to be where I'm at. Like I said to you before we went on air, like I get to work with two of my fitness industry idols
Yeah.
day in day out. I've got people like that in my phone book or whatever, like getting text off them. And like I said, I try to stay as grateful for that as possible. Because I'm sure someday it will come to an end. I'm going to enjoy every single moment of it whilst I can, that's for sure. So it's been a really cool few years, and I just hope that continues.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that like we were saying earlier, like that's living the dream, and so just enjoying it while you can is the best way to go about it.
So
We you know we talked about today going in, hey, we're gonna dial in on nutrition for performance, and what I
yes,
mean by that is not only fueling your body for competitive endeavors, but fueling your body in the day in and day out in the training that leads up to that. I think this is a topic that doesn't get talked about enough, and we kind of talked a little bit about that beforehand, that most people want to focus on the strength side of things and the training side of things because it's more fun in general. It's fun to push your body that way. But the nutrition is a big difference maker for a lot of people. And I want to gear this particularly towards young athletes here. How when you're seeing people that you're working with, I think for starters, let's talk about like what are the misconceptions or the common mistakes that you see people that you work with.
I think a lot of the most common mistakes that we see really boil down to people's perception of what is realistic to actually get in terms of body composition changes or even improved performance in whatever arbitrary time frame that we're talking about. And I think because we have those subconscious biases now, and you can blame it on advertising or social media, whatever you want, the point is we have a skewed perception of what good progress actually looks like. And because we might not even know we have that perception, so we go into the whole nutrition conversation being like, well, you know what, man, I don't want to eat 7 meals a day if I want to put on weight, or like, I don't want to eat nothing but chicken and broccoli if I'm going to lean out, or all of these types of, and we smile, but like there are people that genuinely have that or like similar ideas in their head that they think that that's what's needed to make progress. And the reality is that that type of extreme approach might be needed for extreme results, but 99% of us can never get extreme results anyway. Like that's the beginner or the youth athlete, they are growing at a rate that will be unmatched in the rest of their career. Like they are the population who can grow like weeds. And
Yeah.
yet, if we can put, we don't know how much this person weighs, right? But let's just say a pound to a pound and a half on this athlete a month, assuming they weigh like 150 to 175, whatever, like that. Like, that's incredibly fast progress. And that, if you multiply that out over a year to 18 months, that's huge, right? Like, that's the type of gain where like you go and see your grandma who you haven't seen in 18 months and she's like, what have you been doing? But you say to an athlete like, right, our goal in the next year is to put on like 10 to 12 pounds. They're going to look at you like disheartened because we've been kind of like skewed to think that, oh, dude, but I can put on X amount of muscle in like 4, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, whatever it is, like add 3 inches to your chest in a month, all these like mantras that are going around are at. But then that also comes with the idea of like, oh, well, if I'm going to put on 30 pounds of muscle in 3 months, I need to eat enough to gain 30 pounds in 3 months. Like, that's a second job.
Yeah.
No wonder you don't want to do that. No wonder that your quality of food also just nosedives because you're like, I got to eat like 20 calories per pound of body weight, whatever it might be, probably higher. And it's like, well, yeah, you're probably shoveling in whole milk and like Sour Patch Kids and whatever else, right? To think like, oh, I've got to get those 30 pounds. It's like, dude, you don't. Like in 3 months, just put on 4 or 5. Like you're way ahead. And then all that does then is it bleeds into this whole cyclical process of we overdo our gaining phases and put on loads of extra fat that we don't need to. And if you're an athlete as well, like you're playing rugby or soccer or American football, whatever, running around at like 160 and 185 or 160, very, very different things. Like it's not that one is inherently worse, but they're different, and your performance might drop if your weight changes too much in that time frame as well. Never mind if you're piling fat on, your fitness might go down, all that type of thing. So then we end up in this cycle where like I gain too much fat because I try to do it too fast because I think I can put on this amount of muscle that like Jacked magazine or whatever told me I could. And now I'm like, oh, now I've got to diet down. So I go through that process. No one likes dieting. It's just the way it is, right? So I have to go through that process, which I also don't like. And you just create this whole really inefficient spiral based on just simple misconceptions about what good progress actually is. So I think just going in right off the bat with athletes, like, look, there are two simple truths for most athletes. And the first one is going to be, even if you're a beginner, you're going to gain muscle way slower than you want, even if you're a beginner. But enjoy it whilst you can, because it gets way slower. And then the other one is, if you're an athlete who maybe needs to get leaner for whatever reason, you probably have 50%, maybe more, fat on your body than you think. Because then that misconception also creates an issue where, let's say you've got like a soccer player who's running around at like, I don't know, 16%, 70%, whatever. And they think, oh, well, I'm going to be like athlete lean and at fighting weight, as we might use the loose terminology there, if I lose 20 pounds. So then they just set up this dieting. They're like, I only have to lose 20 pounds. I can do that in 12 weeks. When actually they need to lose like 30 or 40 pounds to be where they want to be and be lean and agile and mobile and all that type of thing. But because they've set up their dieting structure to last 12 weeks, when they get to 12 weeks and they're not where they want to be, maybe they're only 2/3 of the way through their journey, they haven't got any more ace cards to play. Their calories are already low. They're already probably doing extra cardio. They probably already don't feel great. So you got nowhere to go. Like you either just have to, you go to the chicken and broccoli diet and just be even more miserable and watch your performance tank, right? Or you have to accept like, I'm done. I didn't get to where I want, but that's for next time, reverse out of it. But all of that can be avoided by, let's say, kind of giving these athletes a longer term view. And that's, we get that benefit when we've been doing it for 15 years or whatever, right? Like you can argue that like a lot of the time, the idea of maturity is just the ability to project your perception longer into the future. But these young athletes don't have that. And I think where a lot of coaches maybe go wrong, and I don't want to be too critical here because it's a hard job working with young athletes. It's a hard job working with anyone.
Yeah.
But I think there needs to be more done to help try and accelerate the maturity process. Like they have to make their own mistakes at some point. They have to like trip and fall over themselves. They have to go to their friend's basement and max out their deadlift and then realize they're terrible the next day. Like they have to go through that. But if we can start instilling expectations on them that are more in line with reality, then I think a lot of these nutrition problems disappear very quickly. Like, hey man, you're underweight right now. That's fine. Like you are going to grow, but there's no point in like going on the gallon of milk a day diet or, whatever else is maybe replacing that now. Maybe I'm showing age there a little bit too much, but that's okay. You don't need to go to Wendy's for dinner every day. You just need to add like 50 to 100 calories probably. Like have a tablespoon of peanut butter before you go to bed. You're done. It can be that beautifully simple, And it can be the same the other way. Like you've got an athlete, maybe they're just a little bit over their fighting weight. It's kind of like affecting their performance. That's cool. We don't need to give them a complex.
Right.
When we take out that's 100 calories, like, is it a diet soda? Or something stupid like that, like just swapping like some kind of like fattier meat for like a chicken breast or turkey, and then just watch that play out for a month or two. Because the cool thing about these young athletes is hormonally and in terms of activity level, they've got all the stuff going for them right now.
Yeah.
Like they just need to be just in the right area. They don't need to be doing anything extreme because their body is going to amplify whatever it is that they're doing. They're not, you're not like dealing with like a 50-year-old who's trying to get a six pack for the first time in their life. And their entire body physiology is just trying to work against them. Like we just need to give them the gentlest nudge in the right direction and then just instill the virtue of patience on them and just watch the good stuff happen. And I think what can be useful there is, watching or having them look at, if they can, like the careers of maybe athletes that they look up to.
Hmm.
Like none of them were probably like eating McDonald's 3 days a week and went from like 120 pounds to 170 pounds in 3 months and then looked like this Adonis on the field. And all of a sudden they were getting all these like they progressively month after month, year after year, chiseled themselves into the athlete that you see today. And that's exactly the process that they're in, because if all of these things could be fast tracked, we could get them to exactly the 40-yard dash time with 80% body fat, 8% body fat, whatever else they need. If we could do that in 6 months, everyone would be a pro athlete.
Right. Yeah.
And it also, by definition, it wouldn't mean anything then because it'd be easy.
Right.
So I think on the hand of the coaches, it's the biggest thing there is altering perception, just getting them to project their mind forward in time more so that they can see the results that they're actually getting. They'll appreciate more for a start.
Right.
Because they're actually thinking, oh, actually, if putting 10 pounds on in a year is good and I'm a pound heavier, like I'm 10% towards my year's goal already. Like, that's awesome. Like, good. Like, there's some positive feedback there. Whereas if your perception is like 40 pounds is what you should gain in a year, well, then you should never get there anyway, probably.
Hope
Then
not.
you're
Yeah.
feeling like you're constantly feeling like you're underperforming, which is never good, right? No one wants to be in a chronic state of a negative perception of how you're doing. So I think that is the key step there with youth athletes particularly, because they don't have the benefit of time that we have as coaches. And I think sometimes we forget, like, oh, why won't they be more patient? Why do they always want to add weight to them? No, that was you 10 years ago, and you know it.
Right.
Like, you're the guy going in who's like, neck was all jacked up, and you're like, I'm still going to PR my power clean today. Doesn't matter. My head is like stuck over here. Like, you were doing that. So, like, you got to cut them a bit of slack and just gently guide them. But then I think the other side of the nutrition equation that doesn't get talked about a lot is the effect that nutrition has on like your neurology, your neurochemistry, right? Like we talk about macros, and I feel bad because the world of nutrition is horribly tribalistic and polarized. Like it must be very difficult. But so I think the first fundamental kind of flag we can put in the sand is, especially as a young athlete or as an athlete even in general, any nutrition strategy that entirely cuts out some form of nutrition or food group is probably bad, at least in the long term. Sure, like things like keto and stuff have their roles and all these wonderful things. Everything is a tool. Anything that entirely cuts out carbohydrates or fat or fiber or vegetable products or animal products is probably not going to be the best for your overall athletic performance in the long term. So I think we need to put that like out there. It's not that those diets are inherently terrible. Like even the sugar diet has its time and place, but it's so specific and so short-lived that that is not our concern. We're really majoring in the minors there, right? So that would be one for me. But then we start to look at the neurology, like we all know that what we eat affects our mood and all this type of wonderful stuff, but that doesn't really get looked at. And now, when we're looking at, we take, let's say the average balanced diet, which in reality is way too carbohydrate heavy for most, but for some athletes that's going to be suitable. There are some people that are naturally going to thrive on that. And then some people who are going to be less so. So let's say, for example, you have a young athlete who's naturally quite anxious, quite nervous. That's usually due to the fact that they have a higher level of cortisol and adrenaline. Anxiety is just the brain running too fast for the stuff that you're doing right now. That's why you're lying in bed and you can't stop thinking about things. So let's say we take that athlete who's naturally a bit more on the anxious side, tends to overthink and over worry and all this type of thing. When we go on a high carbohydrate diet, generally speaking, our blood sugar is going to be higher, which then also means cortisol and adrenaline are going to be lower. So that is going to be a fantastic thing for our athlete who's pretty anxious. Because, at the end of the day, we don't just want them feeling good on the field. It would be nice if they went to school every day and felt good at home and felt good with their girlfriend or their boyfriend or whatever else, right? A happy athlete is a higher performing athlete. So maybe that athlete needs to be on a higher carbohydrate diet. Maybe they feel more relaxed, they feel more chilled out, they can focus better and concentrate better. People who are watching this, like go look up the arousal performance curve. It's basically like a bell-shaped curve, like almost everything in relation to biology is.
Yeah.
And if you're naturally anxious, you're over aroused. So you go over that tipping point, come down the other side. So in your natural state, you might be an over aroused individual. So let's say we take that person And we're like, okay, right, so you need to lose a little bit of weight, maybe, for example. We're going to put you on a keto style diet, super low carb. That'll just whip the fat right off you. Cool. All right. So what's keto going to do? Very, very low blood sugar all the time, right? Which for some people is amazing. Like for example, take me. I am very sensitive to adrenaline. I don't make a lot of it, right? Hence I'd say hence the piercings and tattoos and being drawn to adrenaline driven activities, right? I respond very well to adrenaline because I don't make a lot of it, which means I'm very sensitive to it. So if someone like me goes on keto, right, and they're like, dude, I have so much energy. I haven't felt this good in 10 years. Like I can focus all day, whatever, right? Those are the people that become like almost the zealots
Right.
for like the keto and the low carb diet. Because for them, it's like this life changing, amazing thing. Why wouldn't they want everyone to do it? But then we go and give that to our 17-year-old anxiety ridden individual, and who isn't riddled with anxiety at 17, right? We give that diet
Especially
to
this
them.
day and age.
Yeah, exactly, right? We give that diet to them, and then what we do is tank their blood sugar and their adrenaline, their cortisol through. They're an absolute wreck. And it's like, no, this is the diet for you. This is what it's like. But so that's where we need to start thinking about what is good for your composition, your performance, all this type of thing. Sure, it's important, but if we need the athlete to function cognitively well for any of that to be important in the first place. So I'll give a really common example of where this goes wrong. This is not in the context of what we're talking, but people might understand it. So I end up coaching a lot of powerlifters and strength athletes, right? So they spend 3 or 4 months preparing for this competition. What they do at their competitions is you got to lift as much as you can for 1 rep, heavy as humanly possible. You do 9 reps in the whole day, 3 squats, 3 benches, that's it, right? But you got to put everything into them. So, typical thing you'll see is they'll sit there, they'll have a Monster Energy in one hand, maybe 2 at some point, and this hand will be a bag of Sour Patch Kids. Okay, so here's the problem: caffeine. Caffeine makes us feel energetic because it brings adrenaline and cortisol up, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? That's fine. But then this hand is a family bag of Sour Patch Kids, which they're funneling into their mouth very efficiently. So their blood sugar is skyrocketing, which brings adrenaline and cortisol down. Meanwhile, the Monster Energy is trying to desperately drag them up. So they're there like, I've had like 400 milligrams of caffeine today, and I don't even feel ready. Like I need another one. So it gets open, and there we go. And because they're doing 2 things that are pulling against each other. But we can take that. Obviously, that's like a polarized example there, right? But then they wonder why they feel terrible the next day. It's like 2 grams of caffeine will do that to you. Funny enough. Let's take the context of our athlete now. Let's say they're about to go out into a practice or a game, right? It's really common for young athletes, especially, to get given a load of really heavy carb-laden things before they go out on the pitch, whether it's practice or a game. And I get the idea behind that. It's like we want to give them fuel. But my point here would be, if your athlete is turning up to practice or a game depleted, you've already lost the battle. You're not going to replenish glycogen in the 30 minutes before their game or their practice starts, right? So kind of like shovel carbohydrates down them right now, all it's going to do is give them a bloated stomach, crash their adrenaline, their cortisol, put all the blood in their digestive system, and go, oh man, I don't feel like doing anything. So it's going to have the opposite effect. What we really want at least at that moment in time, is slightly lower blood sugar, not super low, so that we don't want them to not have the resources they need, but low enough that their adrenaline and cortisol is up. So they actually feel like, cool, I'm good to go. Like I feel ready. And then it's just a case of them. Let's say we'd say a 2 or a 3 hour practice session. Say it's really long. All they need is just enough carbohydrates over that time to stop their blood sugar tanking. That's it. Yeah. We don't need to replenish during a session. That's not going to happen anyway.
Yeah.
So we just need enough carbohydrates in there to stop them getting low blood sugar, but also keep their blood sugar low enough that their adrenaline and cortisol is high. So that, for some athletes, that can be as little as like 10 grams per hour, 10 or 15, depending on the weight of the athlete and how strenuous it is, right? Yeah. Like if we're talking like, should we say like older juveniles, adult athletes were like 17, 18, they've got the body mass of an adult, then we might be looking at like 20 to 30 grams, maybe like 20 for a female, 30 for an average male per hour across their stint of exercise, whatever that might be. If it's a marathon, that's going to be considerably longer, obviously. A football practice will be less. But that's all they need. They don't need gallons of Gatorade and all this other stuff, these are going into their system. They really don't. They just need enough to maintain where they're at. And again, I think this all gets overplayed and overcomplicated to the point where people don't even want to do it.
Yeah.
It can literally be as simple as, if we're looking at pre-workout or pre-session, pre-game, whatever the context is, the best thing you can do is put some amount of fructose into the system. Now, fructose gets a bad rap because fructose goes primarily to liver glycogen. But that's a good thing in this context because, funny enough, your body cares more about your liver than your muscles, right? That's kind of how it should be.
Yeah.
Your liver glycogen is not full, it's depleted. Your body will pull glycogen from other places to put it in the liver. So then you're losing glycogen, not because of the exercise you're doing, but to restore it. So we don't want that. So we can put some fructose in the body before they train to top up the liver glycogen. And if the liver's already full, well, then guess what? It's just going to spill out and go into the muscles where we would like it to be anyway. That and some form of electrolytes before they go out. Because remember, again, if you're already dehydrated, it's too late in many ways. So like, let's put the electrolytes in now before it's a problem, knowing that they're going to have to drip feed into the system anyway. So that would be, it can literally be as simple as a banana and a sodium chloride tablet, like this big, like 500 milligrams. For kids, it's going to be less. It could be like 100 milligrams or 200 milligrams. You could even just give them a glass of orange juice and sprinkle some salt in. Like,
Yeah.
it could literally be that simple, right? Then they go out on the pitch, and sure, they could drink like some watered down Gatorade, sipping it throughout. But like most of the time, the problem with most isotonic drinks is that they're not isotonic, because actually isotonic drinks really don't taste that great, and then people don't want to drink them. So like things like Gatorade, even things like Pedialyte and things like that people use for rehydrating, you probably need to water them down for them to actually be isotonic and rehydrating. So that, whatever serving of Gatorade that you normally use, which might be 300 mil, 400 mil, give that half water again, so it ends up being 600 or 800, so it's half Gatorade, half water. You're probably good,
Yeah.
right? Again, for every hour of exercise, you're probably looking at them, depending on the size of the athlete and how hot it is, 300 to 500 mil of fluid, assuming they're not like fully grown athlete running a marathon in the Sahara.
Yeah.
Right, that's probably enough. So if they've got a 2 hour game, give them a liter, like, so it's half a liter of Gatorade, half a liter of water, sip that throughout the whole thing. Then afterwards, after the game, I'm sure there's probably a lot of athletes here who have practices and games in the evening, and then you've got the problem of like, well, it's 8 o'clock at night, and like I am wired, like I just, maybe I just scored the winning goal as well or something, so like I am like, I gotta go to bed. Well, that is where tanking adrenaline and cortisol now is useful, because now we want the blood sugar to go up because adrenaline and cortisol will come down, and we'll be chilled. I mean, how do you feel? You go out to a restaurant or whatever, right? And you eat way too many carbs, right? Say it's like an all you can eat or something like that, whatever it might be, right? How do you feel? Well, you want to go to sleep. You want to get home, go on the sofa and you fall asleep, right? That's the carbohydrates driving the blood sugar up, bringing the adrenaline down, and putting you in a state where like, oh, you can go to sleep. So I'm not saying go home and stuff your mouth full of pancakes and go to bed with like your stomach all distended and bloated and be like, oh man, I'm gonna throw up, right? But go home, get some carbs in you. Let's say 50 to 100 grams, depending on how big you are, how much exercise you've done. Get that in your system. Sure, get some protein in there if you can, but if you're eating enough protein throughout the day, getting protein immediately after is probably not that important.
Yeah.
That's in the reality of things, right?
Get the car. I'm gonna step in on that real quick, because in practice, something that I think I see often is that particular like youth athlete age group, they're not getting enough protein throughout the day because they're skipping their breakfast a lot of times. Sure. Like that's such a common issue I see, and that. For me, if I had to have one thing, is like you should be regularly, if you're an athlete, you should be regularly fueling yourself. Like skipping a meals, if you're a 3 meals a day kind of person, skipping a meal is not really that's not going to help you in any performance way whatsoever.
No.
And especially you have these late night games, right? That breakfast, lunch too, but like breakfast is going to set you up for the success of the day if you're having this like late night competition like that. That's what your body's drawing on in terms of your liver glycogen, in terms of, your muscle stores. Like that is what is feeding you for that performance. So that being said, like, I don't want to hop in on what you were saying negatively. I just think in practice, like, hey, if you're somebody if you did skip breakfast, which is common, one, try not to do that. please. Two, yeah, then you are going to need some protein at the end of the day, because otherwise your muscles are going to suffer the things that you've worked so hard to develop at this stage, right?
Yeah.
And one day is not going to mess you up either, but you don't want to turn that into a habit of, oh, I skipped my meal, performed poorly, and then skipped adding protein at the end of the day.
Yeah, for sure. Sorry, I should have let me kind of like add pretext to that
Yeah,
suggestion. The whole idea of this like this peri-workout, intra-workout nutrition, its goal is to maintain the good state that you've brought to the practice in the first place.
right.
You haven't turned up to practice on 3 hours of sleep with no food, because all the peri-workout fancy stuff will do then will just stop you getting worse from where you're already at, right? So that's thank you for making that point. So yes, the idea of all these suggestions are we come in fueled and ready to go, and now you maintain that state of fueled and ready and high level performance for longer because you're doing this stuff. It doesn't allow you to elevate your performance magically when you've turned up a depleted, tired wreck.
Yeah.
And I think again with the nutrition and outside of the practices, it doesn't have to be complicated either. The whole idea of like 1 gram per pound of body weight gets thrown around a lot. And there's kind of a reason for that. Like, really, the studies on protein intake aren't that great because they're not usually done on athletes. They're not usually done for long enough to really prove it. In the studies that we do have on athletes, then we do see increased or performance hypertrophy outcomes, whatever you want to call it, in response to higher protein intakes, right? But at the end of the day, if you're a youth athlete who like right now their only protein comes from like peanut butter jelly sandwiches, right? You're eating like 50 grams a day. Your next job is not to eat 150 grams a day. Your
Right.
digestive system will absolutely hate you,
Yeah.
right? You get good at what you do. And when you're eating protein, you get good at digesting and assimilating protein. There's no point sitting there and chewing chicken breast that's not going to get put into the system anyway. So like, again, you go just like the whole muscle gain, fat loss scenario we gave at the beginning. Your goal is like, right, cool. Well, it would be cool if you were eating an extra 50 grams a day, which for some, that's going to be like this insurmountable task. Maybe they don't like food. Maybe they're so busy with school and athletics, and maybe they're playing 3 different sports. It's like, I already just spend my life eating Pop Tarts so I don't waste away. And now you want me to eat 2 more chicken breasts a day? Like, that's a big ask for some people,
Yeah.
So why that can start? How do we get 10 grams? Like, is it a cup of milk, right? Or is it just like half a scoop of protein powder or anything like that? Just anything is going to be an improvement from what you're doing right now. So let's just do that. Do that for a month and then just see how that feels. And chances are your digestive system's not even going to notice anything.
Right.
And within a month, you're totally used to having that glass of milk or putting that half a scoop of protein in your milk or whatever it might be, right? Okay, cool. Well, let's turn that half scoop into a scoop. Or let's take that glass of milk and now put a half scoop of protein powder in there. Cool. So we've got an extra 15 grams now. Let's just do that for a month. Let's ride that out. You're going to feel a little bit better. You're going to recover a little bit faster. And then maybe over the next year, we double your protein intake or whatever it might be. And it can be that brutally simple. I think people just need an action plan where it is entirely possible to get most of the things that, this is getting way too philosophical. It is entirely possible to get the thing that you want with a series of steps that are such low hanging fruit at the time that it is almost impossible not to do them. But you have to be brave enough to aim low enough, right? So like, don't have these crazy, like, oh, I'm going to like, the best one I've ever seen. I think this mass gainer was called Russian Bear 5000. And it was called that because like, you mix it in a gallon of whole milk and then it's got 5,000. So like, this is fantastic. Like, who needs this? But it doesn't need to be that. But like this mass gainer you drink and you're like, right, I can't move for an hour. Right? It can just like, what is the absolute smallest thing I could do to get me towards that better protein intake? Like, just asking my mom for a slightly bigger piece of meat at dinner or like an extra egg at breakfast, whatever it might be. Just make it impossible to mess up. That's cool. Do that. And then you won't even notice you're doing it. And then guess what? Once you've got that, you'll have to do that in 6 months' time. You've done 5 or 6 things that were so painstakingly easy that you almost wrote them off as done, right? And yet here you are 6 months later eating 50 grams more of protein. You're eating your banana before you go out on the for your game or for your practice. You've got your watered down Gatorade, and you're doing all these things now 6 months later, like without almost even noticing. And performance, you're probably not even going to notice your performance is better because it's happened so incrementally,
Yeah.
right? But then maybe you'll look at like your colleague or your teammate or whatever, and you're like, man, I used to struggle with this. Like, whatever let's say the 400-meter sprints that we do or whatever. Like, that used to be me, like, winded after 3 of them. And now I'm kind of here, like, I'm 5 pounds heavier and I feel better. I feel good. My focus is better. Like, there might be a moment where, like, you then actually realize the difference all these things have made. But if you do things right, a lot of the time you won't, because it's
Yeah.
going to be that really slow burn. And again, I think a lot of this ends up, especially with the youth athletes. And I don't want to sound like an old man here, right? But like, who's ridiculing social media. But I think there is a big problem where it is so easy at the drop of a hat to find individuals that are so far along the journey that you think that you have to be doing what they do now when you really don't. Like, their journey, they were you at some point or similar to you, right? And they were the kids skipping breakfast or whatever, right? And they just, guess what? They didn't become a pro bodybuilder or an NFL player overnight. They didn't just wake up one day and say, this is my calling, and turn into some kind of monk and like put all these habits in place. Like, slowly over the years, they were like, you know what, I'm going to get my act together a little bit because I really like this football thing. Like, it's cool. And I think I could make something of this. So I'm going to do just one or two small things that are going to improve that. Maybe it's like getting off my phone half hour earlier before I go to bed, right? Or whatever. So, maybe it's going to be that those electrolytes and a bit of extra protein. I'm going to do that to start. And over this 2 or 3 year journey, then these wonderful things start happening. And that, again, a lot of this ends up coming back to perception and hindsight, or even just how we frame a youth athlete's journey through this, right? We need to emphasize that a great athlete is made throughout the day, every day. They're forged in the bedroom, in their sleep, in the kitchen, with their meals, on the field, with their practices. And you should strive to do all of those things to the absolute best of your ability. But you also need to recognize that you do not need to do all of those things tomorrow. It is that simple. It can be like, right, if nutrition is the worst thing that's holding you back right now, the next 6 months, that's your concern. That's going to give you the single greatest return on investment there. Get some extra protein in, get, I don't know, the electrolytes, the extra water, maybe some extra fiber, which again, fiber is another big one that we're usually battling there with. You've got this is going to be a tangent, I'm sorry, but you've got the typical growing, super energetic, high output youth athlete who needs a very high amount of calories for their body size, but they've got no fiber in their diet. And obviously things start to not happen so well when that happens. So like, I know it sucks, but your veggies are important. And you don't need to go overboard again, but like a small serving a couple of times a day can honestly make a huge difference. And then what you might find is, well, now I'm actually digesting and assimilating the food I'm eating way better. I don't need to eat quite as much. Like that's not uncommon to have people actually lower their calorie intakes because they're drinking more water, they're eating more fiber. They're actually, because it's not what you put into the system, it's what the system can use. Yeah, that's important, right? Like, you can put 2,000 calories of McDonald's in there, but if most of that doesn't get used, right, through whatever means, then you've gained 400 calories for 2,000 calories worth of input or whatever. Like, that's nonsense. Like, maybe if we just improve that food quality a little bit, added in some fiber and some better hydration, you don't need 3,500 calories a day. You need 3,000, or you need 3,100, or whatever it might be. And now your life is easier. So that can be a very difficult conversation. I know, like food, the quantity and quality point there, and I would say we're dealing with young adults here, but we're just dealing with humans, right? Like, getting adults to eat vegetables is hard. Right, let's be honest here. Like,
Yeah.
we talk about this like it's a youth athlete specific, but it's really not.
It's everybody.
I coach plenty of athletes who are like, I'll eat carrots. Like, that is like, okay, well, let's start there. Again, with these youth athletes, we got to accept that, like, okay, we are still dealing with humans here, but like, what vegetables can we sneak into the diet? And again, it can just be slowly and incrementally. Right? They can get like 15 to 20 grams of fiber a day, like work up to that. They're not their body size, they're probably good. Could they do with more? Sure. that would probably be a good thing. But you've got to accept that like there's a lot of food going through the system. We slow things down too much, then that might end up being a bad thing. When I'm coaching very high output individuals, regardless of age, it could be a 15-year-old track and field athlete, could be a 30-year-old pro strongman, whatever. Like a lot of calories need to go in because a lot of calories are going out. There is, I don't want to say it, but it's the truth, and people need to know the truth. There is a time and a place for eating food that is of lesser quality. There is. That's okay. Like you're not going to get, if you're someone who's burning, like you say you're a track and field athlete or you're a cyclist, and you're just burning through glycogen, or like you're not getting that from rice, steamed broccoli, and chicken breast. Like I'm sorry. Like our goal would be have your 3 square meals a day that look exactly like that. Like have your fiber, have your lean protein or protein, whatever, have some carbohydrate. Cool, great. And then there is a small time and a place outside of that where like we just need to get some calories in you. And that's okay. But that doesn't necessarily mean it has to be like Burger King or Pizza Hut or whatever. But like it could be like, I don't know, your mom's homemade flapjacks or like a couple of glasses of milk or, whatever it might be that you don't need to. Because again, I'm not sure about you, but I've run into this where we see the extremes on both ends of the spectrum. We see the kids who are eating McDonald's and Wendy's like 3 times a day and are like, yeah, calories. So like I'm an athlete, calories are the only thing that matters. I got to eat this much. Like no, I'm not saying they should feel guilty, but no, there's no idea in their head that that could be negative in any way. And I know we do have this other side then where people are like, man, I can't eat like that tiny slice of cheesecake. I'm an athlete and I've got to like, my body's a temple type scenario. And it's like, dude, at some point, there's going to be a point where you have satisfied all of the criteria for like fiber, vitamins and minerals and protein. What comes after that, within reason, just do what you need to do to get the calories in. That's okay. Like we drink Gatorade or whatever during our workouts and don't think like, oh, this is pure sugar. This is bad. Like, no, I need this. I need this right now.
Right.
Right. And if you're an athlete who's struggling to maintain their weight, maybe you need something right now just to help that. So there's obviously a big caveat to that. And like there's a time and a place and a moderation element there. But I don't want people thinking, especially like younger individuals, to get good at this athletic journey, they have to be eating like a pro bodybuilder. Because that's always the ideological thing that comes up when they're talking about like taking your. It's really not like that.
Yeah.
It needs to be balanced, and sometimes balance means having a bit of what you want, or like being able to enjoy a meal with your friends or your family. Again, like this is not a youth athlete specific problem though. Like I know this is the context of the episode, and that's cool, but like I actually have to put like off-plan meals in clients' protocols because it's like, dude, take your wife out for dinner once a week. It's important.
Yeah.
Put your phone away, put the chicken and broccoli away, and go to Cheesecake Factory with her. This is important. Like it's the same with these youth athletes. Like, okay, you just played a game, you won, like you're on a high. Like you probably barely eaten all day because you were nervous before the game. Like you just about maybe managed breakfast and then not much else. Like all your friends want to go to Pizza Hut or whatever. Like just go, enjoy the moment, socialize, whatever. That's cool. But then the next day we're back. We're back where we should be, inverted commas, in terms of doing the things that build our body in the long term. I think the reason all of this gets looked over is just because it's really hard to sell sensibility and moderation. It's really hard to sell that. Yeah. Like this, you can't like plant your flag in the sand and say this is the absolute optimal system, because the optimal system is the one that ticks all the markers in terms of your athlete's health. So we got to hit protein, calories, minimal. There's going to be a minimum amount of fat, good fat that we need to get in there as well, and fiber and electrolytes. And then after that, we also need to keep our athletes sane, and that's important too. And we need to remember that. Like having a childhood is nice, and I don't want to talk ill of people, but it's very easy for us to stand here who are like super enthusiastic. We love the strength training or the athletic field. Like this is our lifestyle. This is our lifestyle, our hobby, our job, and all of that all in one. It's very easy for us to look at that through that lens and be like, no kid, you need to be doing X, Y, and Z. It's like, dude, you had a childhood. Like you played video games till 2 a.m. when you should. Like you were up at 2 a.m. playing Halo, eating Doritos or whatever. You know what I mean? Like they need that too. They really do. So like within reason, we have to, I would almost say encourage that right now because, and again, don't want to get too philosophical, it's becoming quite an antisocial environment to be a young adult in. Like telling your group of athletes, like, hey guys, like Friday nights after training, we all hang around and like, I don't know, get pizza or whatever, or at the end of the season you do something like that. It doesn't matter, right? It's just something to create that cohesiveness and that social environment because they're not getting that as much now. And this is where like youth sports, especially team sports, in my opinion, over the next 5, 10 years are going to become so important because it's going to start giving people, say young kids, young athletes, whatever, it's going to start giving them the things that maybe that we took for granted that then maybe they're not getting in their classroom environment anymore. So like it's going to be an increasingly important social outlet for them. And if we don't encourage that and facilitate that, well then we're maybe choking out kind of the last vestiges of this social flourishing that they can have at that age. So that to me is possibly more important than the nutrition, the training program, or whatever else. Like, how well is your athlete becoming socialized? How much are they enjoying what they do? And all of this is super important, but none of it matters if that's not in place. Because how long do they last then?
Right. Yeah.
And again, it's all coming back to like, what's the long game here? I can force my athlete to do the gallon of milk diet a day. It's going to last 2 weeks, and he's going to hate me. Cool. What have we achieved? Absolutely nothing. Except now they're lactose intolerant and they don't like it. Like, cool, good job. Whereas, like, if I just said, you know, man, to drink a glass of milk before you go to bed tonight, and then talk to me in 2 months. If your weight hasn't come up at all, then we'll have another conversation. Like, I'm not the enemy now. I'm not asking them to do anything that's not easily within reach, and I'm creating a positive feedback loop where we implement a change. Then in 2 months' time, maybe I congratulate them for making that change, regardless of whether it was a payoff or not, because life is like that. But you don't always get the payoff you want for the effort you put in. We assess and we go again. And it's all just about creating a structure and a mindset that they can carry on then in the classroom and like in their first job and whatever else. Like, I know this is meant to be about nutrition. I'm sorry.
No,
But like
this is the good stuff, man.
you have the ability to set them up with a framework and a way of thinking and an ideology that they can take with them in everything else they do. You know, like you work hard in the gym, you work hard on the field, you get rewarded sometimes, but sometimes you don't. And when you don't, you reassess. It's not throw your toys out the pram. It's talk to the people that you think are more knowledgeable than you, your coach, right? Your teammates, whatever. Why didn't this work? Let's go again. So on and so forth. Like you can create this mindset that is going to put them in great stead everywhere they go. You know, whether it's going to be like forward planning or just focusing on self-improvement, the ability to appreciate and work well with others, like have a group dynamic, like who doesn't need that at some point in their life? You know, like these are going to be the places now where we integrate these things. Like most of your education is going to be on a computer. Even now, like very soon, people aren't going to be going to university probably, right? The university is going to be this. They're going to be at home on the screen. So they're not even going to have that outlet where like when they're 18 or 19, they leave home, you know, which is scary. They leave their mom and their dad, but they get to like flourish in this new place and meet all the, they're not even going to have that soon. So maybe these team sports and these sports environments are going to be the single most social environment they have in an in-person context. So like, how do we do that? How do we encourage that? And one of the things that I thought was great, like today I'm very lucky I'm going out to OSU to help some of their coaches. I've done that a couple of times now, which has been fantastic. And one of the really cool things to watch there is I've seen a couple of their groups of athletes just training solo, like on their own with no coach or whatever. And they're tunnel visioned. Like there's no phones. There's no talk of anything that isn't related to like their sport or the workout. Like they're encouraging each other, but they're not talking about like their girlfriends or, you know, their tests tomorrow. So they're talking about the game on the weekend, last night's practice or the workout. And it's just like, you go, I go, you go, I go, you go, I go. Like it's a well-oiled cohesive. And it's like, well, no wonder they kick ass when they play. Like, because if that's what they're like on the gym, what do you think that's like out there? Mm-hmm. Like, you know what I mean? That doesn't go away. That's a culture that's bred in. But the ability to create a cohesive unit like that with individuals that have each other's best interest at heart and can communicate well with each other, like that's a huge part of this. Mm-hmm. Huge part of this. And I think it's really hard, right? Because you're like, dude, I'm just a strength coach. Like I tell people how to lift weights. It's like, that is true, right? But you can be a lot more than that. if you want to be. And I would argue you are, whether you want to be it or not,
Mhm.
because you are having an influence. Like, kids are going to look up to their teachers. They might not even like them, but they get influenced by them,
Right.
whether the teacher intends it or not. And a lot of the time, we don't even know the influence that we have on the people that we interact with, especially when we're dealing with younger athletes. So, like, what things would you want to instill in them to make them not just good athletes but good human beings overall? That would be my approach to coaching.
Yeah.
And that was a huge rant and tangent.
I
So,
love it. I love it. That's good stuff. I think bringing it to like the concepts we talked about, like we talked a lot about moderation,
mhm,
like taking a slow segmental approach,
mhm,
not this all or nothing principle, right? You don't, it's not everything, all at once, but we
mhm,
slowly make these changes. And then talking about patience, like those are, like you said, those are skills and principles that if we can apply them to our life over the lifespan, we're going to develop a lot of wisdom and maturity and see a lot of good things happen as a result
mhm,
from the time that we're 10 to the time that we're in the grave. And that is, something that I think you're exactly right. It's underappreciated in the field, underappreciated even for the volunteer coach who's just coaching their kids' team because nobody else volunteered. You know what I mean?
yeah, absolutely.
That's if you can instill just some of those principles in these kids, like they're gonna benefit for life potentially if they're
Yeah.
paying attention.
Sorry, go on.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think we almost fall into a trap sometimes where, and of course, there are special circumstances or contexts involved when you're dealing with youth athletes. So there are context specific issues that we have there, but the reality is that most of the answers are the same for every demographic. And what I mean by that is none of us have enough time. Like, none of us have time to like prep five wonderfully organic home cooked meals. Like, if you're an adult, you've got a full time job. Maybe you've got a kid. If you're a kid, you've got school, you've got sport, you've got all this other stuff, right? Like, none of us have time for this stuff. So there's that. And then, secondly, none of us are patient enough. We all want, if we were given the option, do you want the thing you want now or in 2 weeks? There's a reason Amazon Prime exists and we all pay for it, right? We're all impatient and we all want the biggest outcome possible with probably what you'd call the smallest possible input, right? And that is going to be universally true, regardless of the age bracket. It doesn't matter whether they're 10, whether they're 18, or whether they're 65, right? That is what you're dealing with. Now, obviously, the specific goals in each context are slightly different, but that's how you need to frame this thing. Like, I have a youth athlete who wants to be in the NFL tomorrow. They don't have the time to meal prep because who does, right? Meal prep companies exist for a reason, and I need to give them a way that they can just get incrementally better in any way. So we take that with nutrition. Like, we just say, well, cool, okay. Now I just want you to have protein 3 times a day, and I want you to have some kind of drink during our practices that has some electrolytes in it, with some carbs, whatever. Like, there's your pillars, right? Oh, and then maybe 6 months down the line, it's like, cool. I want you to start eating like 1 or 2 servings of vegetables a day. Cool. Let's get that locked in for 3 months. Okay, I want you to bring a banana or 2 apples or something to every practice and every game. There you go. And it can be that just beautifully simple.
Yeah.
It genuinely can. You're like, I'm not going to say nutrition is not important. Nutrition is important. But the reality is that the bits that we worry about, the bits that we concern about, are the fringes. They're the cherry on top of the cream, on top of the icing, on top of the cake, whatever. Those are the bits that we're like, oh man, I'm not sure. Should I be getting like 100 grams of protein or 110? Should I be getting like 20 grams per serve? It's like, you don't even worry about any of that. Like 80 to 90% of your results are just eat a decent amount of protein, eat a decent amount of fiber, eat enough carbs and fats to fuel whatever your activity level is. And then we talked about the kind of peri-workout stuff if you want to get fancy. But like, that is approachable. And most of us can go from the absolute worst of diet strategies. I say strategy, it would be no strategy, right? But the worst of diet habits,
Right.
right? Most of us can go from that to something that resembles a pretty good diet structure in 6 to 12 months with, I'm not going to say ease, but without it being incredibly arduous, just by taking those incremental steps bit by bit. And, I get it, especially for a lot of coaches, because you might only have these kids for like a year. It won't even be a full calendar year, even, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So you want to reinvent the wheel like now. You want to turn them into a pro athlete in 6 months because you're like, yeah, the next coach who gets this kid, they're gonna know. They're gonna know that I did this. I turned them into this. Well, it's like, no, you're gonna turn them into the kid that quits in 2 years. Okay, what you can do is, here's the kid I've inherited now with X, Y, and Z problems. Okay, I'm going to hand them over to this other coach next year, and my only job is for that coach to have better problems to solve than I have. Like, my kid does this. This athlete doesn't know how to power clean, eats no vegetables, and doesn't drink any water. Okay, over here now. Now they're power cleaning badly. Okay, they're eating carrots and peas twice a day, and they drink a glass of water, half a glass of water for every diet soda they drink or whatever, right? Cool. Are they perfect? Absolutely not. But your next coach, or future you next year, if it's the same coach, has a much better problem to solve. And that is your job, and that's your athlete's job as well. Like, when you're reflecting this on yourself, you're like, there's no such thing as perfection. It doesn't exist. What are my problems now? What would be better problems to have? Right? Like, Donald Trump has money problems. He just has way better money problems than I do. Right? But they still exist. So, like, what problems does a pro athlete have? Like, one day I would like to have those problems. Like, I'm so powerful and fast that, like, I can't train that often. Well, okay, that's cool. But maybe now let's just start putting some water and vegetables in the system and get you a little bit faster, and maybe keep doing that process, I guess, over and over and over and over and over again, and let's see where we get in 3 to 5 years. Like, the cool part of this is that you just have no idea how good you can be until you start doing this stuff. And I think, and again, this is like way off topic from nutrition, but there's a really cool effect called, I'm going to mispronounce it, so I apologize, but it's called like the Pygmalion effect, where they study this in Japan, where basically you take kids, regardless of their intelligence quota, and you just tell them that they score into like the top 5 percentile for intelligence. Okay. And regardless of what their level of intellect is, they perform above and beyond it every time. Because you tell a kid you've got potential, they get braver, they get more confident, they ask more questions, they take on more challenges, they do all the things that make them better more. Then there's the reverse of that. It's called the golem effect, where you tell a kid you're no good, all of that spirals the other way. They don't ask questions, they don't challenge themselves because they will just assume they're going to fail, and they even perceive failure as like well, that's just confirming what I already knew, that I'm not good enough. So if we take that principle and then put that on our kids, our youth athletes, whatever, we say, well, look, these are the things you need to do better, but like, we have no idea where your upper ceiling is. Like, maybe you are the next NFL star. Maybe you are. We have absolutely no idea, and you will never have any idea until you do these things. So let's just imagine for everyone that that's the upper ceiling, right? If you do the hard work, obviously that's very like, that has to be put in there contextually. But if we can create a belief system where, like, it doesn't matter where you're at, you can always get incrementally better in some regard, then you create a human being that will walk uphill forever, which is basically what life is, right? It's never easy. It's just different at some point, and it's rewarding, but you were built to walk uphill. Like, we're built to challenge ourselves. If we create that challenge, like, we're constantly putting little things in front of them. Could be nutrition, could be their lifting in the gym, could be their lifestyle outside of the gym. Just putting these tiny little challenges to them that are easy to achieve, but also going to illustrate some form of incremental progression towards the person they want to be. That's how you create a fantastic athlete. Like, they're sculpted from that. They're, of course, like genetics, all these other wonderful things. We know that. But there's also quite a lot of athletes at the top level that really don't have the best genetics. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not saying they're super common, right? But there's plenty of just what you'd call like the workhorses who are just stubborn enough to just not get the message and be like, I'm going to do it anyway, right? Because they've got this system in place where, like, I'm not good enough right now, but I can get 1% better every year, or whatever you call it, right? And eventually, through just stubborn headedness, I will get in whatever capacity I can. And that's awesome too. Yeah. And they know things, and they have, and again, sorry, this is totally tangent, but there are things that you learn as a non-gifted or non-talented athlete that talented athletes may never learn, because you have to uncover every single rock, right? You have to do your nutrition properly. You have to get 8 or 9 hours of sleep per night. You have to do all these things, right? You have to take your strength training seriously. And I mean this in no disrespectful way, right? But like, if you're not genetically gifted, you can't be Usain Bolt and eating chicken McNuggets every day and break the world record, right? And I'm not taking anything away from his ability, but you know, there's plenty of people who are competing against him who can't do that and still can't touch him, right? That might be the case for you. Maybe you're not the super gifted kid right now at this moment in time. Maybe there are other kids who are like surpassing you, but maybe you're the kid that learns all the lessons that they're asking you about in 10 years time when they finally hit their upper ceiling, and they're like, man, like I've actually got to start like watching what I eat. I got to start sleeping. Like, what do you like? You're like a well-oiled machine. What do you do every day? And you're like, well, here's the things I spent the last 10 years mastering, right? That you didn't think you need, and now here we are. Cool, right?
Yeah.
I'm at the same level as you, but I've got all these lessons that maybe I can bestow upon you, and maybe we all get better for that. So there's definitely a time and a place for having the conversation with these kids that like doesn't matter how good you are or you perceive you are or whether you're super gifted right now, because being gifted is wonderful, but it doesn't give you everything, right? If you don't have to work hard, there are all these wonderful things down here that
Yeah.
you are going to have to discover if you want to get there. And that's cool because that stuff will just carry through forever. Whereas at some point, and we've all seen it, like if you've been to college or something, right? You have the naturally intelligent, smart guy, friend, girl, whatever, right? Never studies, never revises for anything, doesn't turn up for half the classes. At some point in their education, they fail. They hit a point and they're like this is the ceiling of my natural talent. Like I've gotten so far. I'm halfway through college or university, as we would call it, and now I have to learn how to study for the first time. Like that's weird. Like, and at that point that's really hard to do as well because you're so far along and you have to learn that skill with this super complex stuff. It's like whereas maybe the kid who's less intellectually gifted, whatever you want to call it, has created all the how they're the people with like a study schedule and like 3 or 4 different highlighters every lecture they go to, right? Whatever, they're super organized. They're like, I got you beat. Not that it's about beating anyone, right? But at that point in time, they are better prepared for the challenge than the naturally gifted person.
Yeah.
So I,
I have an example of that, which I think is really, really cool. So like I was that person of like naturally I just understood things. I could lean back in class and just absorb and barely have to read a textbook. My buddy in college, on the other hand, thankfully I got slapped with anatomy and physiology first year, and that didn't go so well. But my buddy,
most people do.
yeah, that's a make or break kind of class. You see a lot of people quitting and changing majors in the first couple of weeks, but we made it through. Um, but a friend of mine was much more like he knew, he had a learning disability. He had, throughout high school, he had to focus and study. Didn't do so great his first semester, but like kept improving, improving, improving. Nearly recovered almost a 4.0 GPA by the end of college, and now is crushing it in med school, right? Which is awesome to see. I'm very proud of
Yeah,
him as a friend. But like, it also took him a long time to get into med school because that first semester didn't go so well, and so they're looking at his initial grades and it's like, but
sure.
he's committed and learns, and he's very good, and so now obviously he has those skills and it's serving him well. Another example, when it comes to athletes, an athlete I worked with, really unique. Nobody really, so this was ice hockey athlete. Nobody really took a look at him. The place that I was working, as I was there as an athletic trainer, so on the sports medicine side, he was at a club level, started out as a walk-on to the D3 Division 3 club team, and the place I had all 3 divisions, 1, 2, and 3, club level. Works his butt off year 1. Next year he's on D2. Works his butt off year 1. That next year he's on D1. Keeps climbing the ladder, and sat the bench for Division 1 his junior year, and then finally gets a chance to play and comes up with all these goals his last year of college on that D1 squad. Ends up being like a key player for them that nobody would have seen.
Yeah,
Now he's playing pro. And so somebody who went from, hey, maybe I won't play in college, to I'm playing at a professional level. Now it's a lower professional level. It's not like he's in the NHL, right? But that guy has gotten to live his dream to play professionally at the thing that he loves because he worked his butt off and learned a lot of those lessons. And you can see like the details, like you would say something to him either in the strength and conditioning room, or like I'm having conversations around like, hey, what's your sleep like, your nutrition? Like these things, and now you can see the gears just turning, and you say one thing to him and he's like, yep, got it, and that's
Hmm.
it. And at that level, obviously he had spent years developing that practice of, hey, I'm just going to take the one thing that I need from this and apply it immediately,
Yeah.
and that was
It's,
it. Yeah.
and I think, it's a really easy trap to fall into. Again, we say youth athletes, but it's everyone, right? You always see the tip of the iceberg. Like you see the 9.58 or whatever, he ran in 100 meters, and you see the touchdown in the Super Bowl or whatever. And it's like, I get that you want that. I get it. Like, who wouldn't? We all want that. Like, there isn't a guy sat there in his 40s who like doesn't still have that tiny bit of a dream that one day some team is going to call him up and be like, "Hey, it's your time, man." You know what I mean? Like, we would all take that right now. But what we need to remember is that, take someone like Patrick Mahomes, for example. I don't follow American football that, but I've watched the Netflix documentary, so hopefully I'm on the right path here, right? Like, no one said to him as like a 10-year-old, like, you're going to be in the Super Bowl, right? So all this stuff that you're resistant to, just know it pays off and you're going to the Super Bowl. That doesn't happen.
Right.
Like, there was no guarantee there ever. Even when he became pro, there was still no guarantee. Until you actually get there, there isn't. And the point is, he and every other successful athlete, I'm sure, acted like it was guaranteed if he did it. He did it with the intent of someone who knew, if I do X, Y, and Z, I will get there, right? And that is how we kind of need to treat this situation with all these athletes, is that if if you want the thing at the pinnacle, you have to do all the groundwork, but you have to do the groundwork with the intent and the mentality of someone, as if they knew with their soul that it was going to lead to the outcome that you want. All of us can go through the motions, right? We can go through our practices and our games and do the bare minimum and have moderate success. But the ones that rise to the top, sure, there's some genetics and there's some other chance-based things involved, but I can also probably tell you that none of that becomes more likely to happen without hard work. Like, regardless of your context, your scenario, your goal, whatever, nothing good ever is more likely without hard work. So the more of that we can put in, like I said, that is going to be your diet, your sleep, your training, your practices, how you interact with your teammates, how much you learn, how many questions you ask your coach, all these wonderful things. But that's how you need to act. You need to almost act like it's destiny. And that's when things actually start happening. Because, and again, this is going to sound like really like airy fairy and weird, but like that is it. These things become self-fulfilling prophecies purely not because like you've manipulated the universe to make these things happen and you're God, but because once you actually thought this could happen, you treated all of these things with enough seriousness and enough intent that they actually had the outcomes that you wanted them to have. Like you don't put your full effort into anything, you don't get the results you want.
Right.
And it's not a linear relationship. You put 50% in, you probably get 10%. You put 70% in, you might get 40%. You put 90% effort in, maybe you get 70 or 80%. But it's only when you put 100% effort in. I'm not even going to say you get 100% because you still don't. That's the only way you get up to like 80, 85, 90, 95 is by putting in 100%. So the way we can instill that in athletes again is these just micro steps of improvement and creating an environment where they believe their own hype to some degree. And I'm sure there's going to be a couple you have to knock down once or twice. And that's cool because life does that too. They need to learn how to respond to that. But they need to believe that all of these steps could lead to the thing that they want, regardless of what stage they're at right now. And I think if you can, and I'm not saying any of this is easy by any stretch of the imagination, I'm not. But I
Right.
am saying it's very important if you want to have a long lasting athletic career or a long lasting impact on those that you coach. But that is when you create that, you'd probably be amazed at how many of the other problems fall away. Because now you've got an athlete that has a better relationship with self improvement, has an eye on the prize that is significantly further in the future, which means you have to do things differently. And they now want to do the things that they need to. So now they want to eat their veggies. Now they want to drink water. Now they want to eat their banana before the game. Now they want to eat protein because they're like, this is how I be the best person I can be, athlete, whatever, football player, doesn't matter. They're the one, maybe now you can create a scenario where they're the ones asking you, what do I need to do? And if you can get there, and again, I'm not saying this is easy, but if you can get there, your job as a coach is already like 99% done, because now all you have to say is go do this, and that's it. That's it. They're gonna be like a robot almost, in a good way. Like, they're just gonna live and say, cool, that's what I need to do next. I'm going to go do that thing. And then you're like, okay, come back to me in a month, ask the same question, we'll think of something else.
Yeah.
There's always, you're never going to run out of things your athlete could do better.
Sure.
There's an infinite number of things there. Like I said, you're just solving better and better problems. Like, what's the worst problem we have right now? Well, they're on their phone till 2 a.m. There you go. Maybe now it's nutrition. They just don't drink enough or eat enough. Like, there's your next. Cool, that's the next. But like, you as a coach are never gonna have a problem or an issue with, like, I don't know what to tell this athlete they could do slightly better. It's just not.
A great problem to have. Great problem to have.
Yeah, absolutely. But if we create that culture and that mindset, then we're not pushing a rock up a hill anymore.
Right.
Which is what a lot of us feel like we're doing a lot of the time. Like I said, I'm not saying any of this is easy. It all takes time. But at least with youth athletes, you're getting access to them at a time when their habits and their opinions and their ideologies are not fully formed, which is scary because you have a lot of influence, but it's also awesome because you have a lot of influence. You're not dealing with someone who's very set in their ways and has, like, been doing things this way. Imagine like the stereotypical like old timer strength coaches, like, well, we've been doing this program for 30 years. Trying to teach that guy something new is real hard, right? You got some guy who's just qualified and he walks in your facility and you're like, cool, you're a blank slate. Awesome. This is what to a degree that you have that with your youth athletes. Like, they don't have a lot of well-formed opinions on a lot of this stuff yet. Like, maybe they just don't know they need to sleep 8 hours a day. Like, we take a lot for granted. There's a lot of like assumed knowledge.
Yeah.
We're like, come on, everyone knows they need to eat protein. No, they don't. Have you been a 12-year-old who spends half the day on TikTok? And again, I'm not saying it's good either. Chances are you haven't read anything about protein intake. And chances are their parents haven't either. But you have to work on that presumption. So how often are you overlooking things just because you're presuming that, like, these kids know they need to drink water and they need to turn up fuel? Like, maybe they just don't. Like, have you ever sat down with your athletes and gone, hey guys, just so you know, like, this is what a good day looks like. Like, in terms of nutrition and sleep, like, if I wanted to play as well as possible in my game on Sunday in the evening, this is what a good day would look like to facilitate that. And to just spell it out.
Yeah.
Like, dumb it right down. In your head, it's dumbing it down. To them, it's like revolutionary. I'm sure like half of them are just going to go, yeah, whatever, right? And then walk away. But there's going to be at least one kid there who goes, oh man, I didn't know half of that stuff. Like, veggies get me jacked. If I eat enough, like, I need them to get strong. Like, do you know what I mean? I need to drink that much water per day. Like, I thought just one glass in the morning was. We just don't know what they don't know. Right. And so often, I think a lot of our frustrations are based on the fact that we have this expectation and framework that they should know these things and they should also grasp these things in a set time frame. Like, again, a lot of the time, I speak to a reasonable amount of strength coaches, not all of them with youth athletes, but athletes in general. And there can be a lot of frustration at times, and I get it. But then also the question I would always put back to them is like, so you showed the arbitrary example. So you showed your athlete how to power clean 3 times. Yeah. And they still just won't get it. What are you basing the presumption of that an athlete should understand a power clean on the 3rd time? Like, that's your presumption that's leading to you being frustrated. Like, for all you know, it's 50, and like, if they get it on the 6th time, they might be way ahead of average for all you know. So again, it's always good as a coach, even as a parent, or even then as the athlete themselves, like, what am I basing all of these presumptions on? Like, do I actually know that I'm not a good player or I'm a great player? Like, is that actually accurate? I don't know. But for the coaches especially, like, there is never going to be any harm in going over the things that maybe the last coach did and the last coach did. And there's no harm in that. All it's doing is reiterating, like, guys, this is important. Yeah. This is like the basic stuff to like be alive and cognitively functioning and healthy. Like, you want to be an athlete, you got to do this stuff like times 10, if you want to be really high performing. But let's just revisit these things. And, if they haven't gone over it before with them, well, then you've just opened their world to this whole realm of possibilities of like, I don't just turn up and train really hard. Yeah, maybe they don't know that. Yeah. And that's okay. But like, it's not okay to presume they do and never have that conversation, in my opinion, because both of you lose out. They don't know what they could be doing, and you're getting frustrated because they're not doing the things they don't even know they could be doing.
Right.
So I think at the beginning of every semester, every year, whatever it is that you're dealing with, it would be good to have that conversation. Or if you're the athlete and you want to get better, maybe your coach is in a scenario where they don't want to do that because they've done it before and they've just gotten backlash. Nobody's interested, or the parents are like, "Don't tell my kid what to eat," or whatever it might be. It could be a million things. You can ask them. You can get coach like, what should I be doing outside the gym? Is there anything like I can be doing outside of practice that maybe would help me accelerate my progress? And they're probably going to be like you. A kid goes up to a coach and asks that, you watch their eyes light up. Like, so if you're the youth athlete listening to this, like, just go and ask your coach, like, hey man, like, I want to be better than I am now. What could I do? They are going to be. It's going to be the happiest they've been all day by a mile.
Tom, for the folks at home, if they're looking to hear more from you, learn about
So
obviously lifting and everything that goes into training, where can they find you?
So I have one social media platform because that's enough for me.
Good.
So I'm on Instagram, which is at Phoenix Performance Training. I also have a book that's out co-authored with Christian Thibodeau, which is The Overload System for Strength. That's a cool book for those who are like interested in heavy lifting or anything like that. It's about old school strength methods and like things that got lost. Then early next year, I say early, like around May next year, my next book is due out, which is all about individualized programming, which is useful whether you're an athlete or a coach. If you program for yourself or for the people, it's a 400-page step-by-step guide how to assess an athlete and how to write and periodize an individualized program for that individual. And then outside of that, I'm also on the Elite FTS YouTube channel quite a bit. I co-host the Table Talk podcast quite a bit as well. That's probably worth checking out if there's any more further education that people want
there. Yeah. Love it. Tom, I really appreciate your time today. Thank you for coming on. Great conversation for parents, kids, coaches alike. I think a lot of people are going to grab a lot of value out of this. So, really appreciate you sharing your wisdom and your experience there. So
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
yeah, absolutely. If you're listening with us, really appreciate you guys tuning in. Really appreciate you guys taking the time to join us today. If this is your first time or if you've not done it yet, please like and subscribe. If you're listening on Spotify, give us a 5-star review. That goes a long way to make sure that this information is heard, and it needs to be heard. So I really appreciate you guys tuning in today, and we'll see you next time.